Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into a place so hazardous, even your in-laws would think twice before visiting the Victorian home. Tonight, we're taking a cozy stroll through a world where the humble act of sitting in your own parlor could lead to spontaneous combustion. Your morning shave might result in facial reconstruction, and that newfangled electric bell could either summon the butler or set the curtains on fire. Before we start admiring the life-threatening ingenuity of our 19th century ancestors, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me what the most dangerous thing in your house is right now. Now, dim those lights, put on a fan for that soft white noise, and get comfortable. Let's pause for a second. What was it like to own a home where the wallpaper might be toxic, the carpet could explode, and even your cheese grater was out for blood? Could you survive a dinner party where the dessert is laced with lead? Would you trust a bath if the water heater ran on gas and the only carbon monoxide detector was your uncle collapsing in the next room? And could you master the subtle art of not electrocuting yourself just by ringing for tea? Congratulations! You've just woken up in a fashionable Victorian home. The year is 1882. You are surrounded by mahogany, antimacassars, and more questionable inventions than a late-night shopping channel. May God have mercy upon your soul. Step into your ornate Victorian parlor, a jungle of tasseled furniture and curiosity cabinets. Beneath the cozy veneer lurks a deadly arsenal. Arsenic, green wallpaper, unstable gas lights, and the ever-present possibility of spontaneous human combustion. Please, sit down. Just not too close to the fire. Let's set the scene. It's a chilly Tuesday evening in 1882, and you, pillar of the middle class, proud owner of 3 new inventions and 1 questionable mustache, are preparing to entertain. The drawing room is the crown jewel of your home. Plush armchairs beckon like the embrace of a beloved aunt, who also happens to be flammable. The wallpaper is a fashionable, hypnotic shade of green, practically glowing in the gaslight, and everything smells faintly of coal dust, violets, and ambition. You've invited friends over for tea and polite conversation, but there's a little voice in the back of your mind whispering, "Don't lean on that mantelpiece." Why? Because the mantelpiece, a triumph of carved wood and inherited dust, has spent all winter drying out to the consistency of a pine cone in the Sahara. One stray ember, one ill-placed coal from the fire, and the evening's entertainment turns into a live demonstration of the fire brigade's response time. Let's talk about that gaslight. You know, the one hissing above your head like a caffeinated snake, flickering cheerfully while quietly leaking just enough gas to set the mood and possibly the drapes. Lighting a gas lamp in a Victorian drawing room is an act of optimism or pure denial. Sometimes the flame doesn't catch, and you're left waving matches and prayers at a cloud of invisible, odorless doom. Sometimes it catches a little too well, and suddenly the family cat is making a break for it under a smouldering settee. And what about that famous wallpaper? You picked the finest, most expensive pattern, Scheele's Green, named after a Swedish chemist with a suspiciously high tolerance for arsenic. In the soft evening glow, the walls shimmer with elegance and a barely measurable aura of toxicity. That headache you've been nursing for days? Not the weather, not your neighbor's violin practice, just good old-fashioned chemical warfare, courtesy of your interior decorator. Inhaling arsenic dust is practically a hobby. You wonder if this is what progress smells like. Now, let's not forget the beloved parlor rug. Woven by hand, shipped at great expense, and treated with a variety of Victorian chemicals whose only job is to shed fibers, release fumes, and burst into flames if someone so much as sneezes aggressively. You walk across it, socks crackling with static electricity, just praying you don't reenact the great carpet fire of '77. The centerpiece of your drawing room is, of course, the curiosity cabinet. Inside, a collection of seashells, fossils, taxidermied squirrels, and several glass jars with contents best described as mysterious. It's the Victorian version of an Instagram wall, designed to impress guests, confuse children, and occasionally harbour deadly spores or ancient bacteria. Touch at your own risk. If you accidentally knock something over, just hope it isn't the jar labelled Madagascar. 1865, do not open. Even your furniture has opinions. Those high-backed chairs and velvet divans are stuffed with horsehair straw and sometimes whatever the upholsterer found behind the stable. They creak, groan, and occasionally emit puffs of dust that make you wonder if you've just been exposed to the Victorian plague starter pack. Don't sit down too quickly. Some of those legs are one good sigh away from collapse. Now, as the fire crackles and the conversation turns to the merits of indoor plumbing, or the rumour that the Duchess's cousin caught on fire at Christmas, you notice a subtle tension. Everyone in the room sits just a little bit stiff, eyes darting between the flames, the hissing lamp, and the door. You're all quietly aware that in the grand tradition of the age, the drawing room is less a place to relax and more a test of your reflexes. The Victorians called it hospitality. You might call it parlour roulette. And as the evening winds down, the gaslights sputter, the fire dies, and you bid your guests good night, you can't help but feel a peculiar sense of victory. You've survived another evening in the most dangerous room in the house. Tomorrow, you might even try your luck with the breakfast nook, but only if you're feeling brave. After all, in the Victorian home, every comfort comes with a dash of danger and a sprinkle of arsenic. Sleep well, if you dare. You want to brighten up the room with a splash of colour? Excellent. Your choice is a fashionable shade of Shields green, which, as luck would have it, contains enough arsenic to decorate your walls and your lungs. Every breath is a lottery ticket you didn't mean to buy. Let's start with a little context. In the Victorian era, interior design wasn't just about keeping up with the Joneses, it was about outshining them, blinding them, and, occasionally, outliving them. Enter Shields green, a brilliant emerald pigment that made walls shimmer like envy at a church picnic. This shade was the height of sophistication. It adorned drawing rooms, nurseries, bedrooms, and any other space where you'd like your guests to feel both impressed and slightly nauseous. But what nobody told you, certainly not your friendly neighbourhood decorator, is that this wallpaper is essentially murder in sheet form. Shields green got its dazzling colour from copper arsenite, a compound known for its vibrancy, its staying power, and its cheerful willingness to kill anything with a functioning set of lungs. You hang the wallpaper, you admire the transformation, and then, ever so subtly, you begin the great Victorian tradition of slow, decorative poisoning. How, you ask, does a wall covering go on the offensive? Simple. The arsenic doesn't just sit there, politely minding its own business. In the damp, drafty British climate, the pigment can flake off as a fine dust or form arsenic-laced mould. These tiny particles float through the air, invisible and inescapable. You host a dinner party, you open a window, someone sneezes, and congratulations, you've just inhaled a dose of toxic chic. You might start to notice symptoms. A little headache here, a spot of dizziness there. Maybe your children develop mysterious rashes, or the family cat stops using the litter box and starts holding philosophical conversations with the wallpaper. In the grand tradition of Victorian medicine, the diagnosis will range from nerves to bad airs to perhaps you need less fresh fruit. No one blames the wallpaper. After all, how could anything so lovely be deadly? The best part? Arsenic green isn't just for the walls. It's also found in textiles, artificial flowers, and even the pages of your favourite books. You could poison yourself by admiring your curtains, dusting the mantel, or simply reclining with a novel in bed. It's a full-body lifestyle hazard. The more colour-coordinated your decor, the more likely you are to need a fainting couch, which incidentally is probably stuffed with horsehair and despair. The situation gets even more absurd when you consider Victorian cleaning habits. Dusting? Terrific idea. Let's take a feather duster and whip a cloud of arsenic around the nursery. Spring cleaning becomes less a battle against filth and more a contact sport with toxicology. If you're very lucky, you'll merely develop a cough that never goes away. If you're unlucky, you become a cautionary tale for your local doctor, who will absolutely blame your untimely demise on your delicate constitution or wandering womb. Naturally, the wallpaper industry wasn't keen to admit fault. For years, manufacturers denied that arsenic was dangerous at all. Nonsense, they said, waving away reports of sickly children and dead parakeets. It's just a coincidence. The British Medical Journal began publishing warnings in the late 19th century, but by then, millions of homes had already gone green, and not in the eco-friendly sense. Modern scientists now look back in stunned disbelief. Imagine redecorating your living room today with the express intent of sprinkling poison on every surface. That's Victorian progress for you. All the ambition, none of the safety labels. So, as you gaze around your beautifully appointed room, take a moment to appreciate the fact that your paint probably isn't plotting against you. Shields green is out of fashion now, replaced by colours that may hurt your eyes but won't dissolve your organs. You can thank the Victorians for this lesson in interior design. Sometimes, style really is to die for. The plush comfort of a Victorian carpet, stuffed with soft wool, brushed to perfection, and soaked in highly flammable chemical treatments. With every step, you generate static electricity. One spark and you're not redecorating, you're detonating. Welcome to the high-stakes game of Victorian interior design, where even the floors are a gamble. The carpet is the star of the show, deep, patterned, and luxuriously thick, a clear sign you've arrived in polite society. But beneath every intricate floral motif lurks a ticking time bomb, courtesy of 19th century chemistry and the world's most optimistic rug salesman. Let's start with materials. Your carpet is probably woven from wool, the fibre of choice for the upwardly mobile Victorian. It's warm, durable, and, under normal circumstances, only somewhat likely to ignite. But the Victorians weren't content with natural fibres. No, that would be too safe, too boring. Instead, they treated their carpets with a heady cocktail of finishing agents: paraffin wax for sheen, turpentine for scent, benzene for stain resistance, and sometimes a little mercury for that extra je ne sais quoi. The result? A floor covering that could double as kindling in the right mood. Now imagine a cold, dry winter's evening. You shuffle across the parlour to stoke the fire. Your slippers, lined with synthetic felt and questionable optimism, drag over the carpet. Each step is a science experiment in static electricity, one that's about to end with a bang. You reach for the brass poker, and suddenly, snap! A blue spark leaps from your fingertip, and the air is filled with a smell best described as hair salon meets fireworks show. If you're lucky, only your fringe is singed. If you're not, it's a dash for the water bucket and a stern talk with the insurance agent, if you can find one who covers spontaneous parlour combustion. Let's not forget about the cleaning routine. The Victorians loved their gadgets, and carpet sweepers were all the rage. Unfortunately, most were made of metal and featured a series of rotating brushes designed to whip up dust, and, naturally, a charge of static. Combine that with a heavy Victorian skirt, and you're looking at a live reenactment of Benjamin Franklin's greatest hits. The only thing less predictable than Victorian weather is whether or not your weekly cleaning session will require a fire extinguisher. The fun doesn't stop with the carpet itself. Underneath, you might find a layer of underlay treated with innovative chemical preservatives. Mothballs, for instance, contained naphthalene, a substance now mostly reserved for laboratory mishaps and detective novels. Not only did it make your parlour smell like a crime scene, but it also ensured that, should the worst happen, the fire would burn with a vibrant, toxic flare. Firemen responding to Victorian house fires often found themselves battling not just flames, but a swirling cloud of chemical fumes, poisonous enough to make even the most hardened chimney sweep cough. But why stop at the floor? The Victorians loved to layer their dangers. Rugs were often thrown over carpets for added warmth and for extra tripping hazards. These rugs, woven from whatever was handy and cheap, were sometimes dyed with aniline, an early synthetic dye known for its vivid colors and impressive ability to burst into flames if you looked at it wrong. If you ever wondered why old photos feature so many people staring grimly at the camera, consider this. Smiling increases static, and in a Victorian living room, that's just asking for trouble. Of course, you could always remove the carpet, expose the floorboards, and risk a splinter. Or, if your house is truly modern, discover linoleum, the miracle floor covering that's less flammable than carpet, but twice as likely to give off noxious fumes if you drop a hot coal on it. Pick your poison: fiery death or slow, suffocating regret. So tonight, as you tiptoe across your own floor, maybe spare a grateful thought for synthetic fibers and the humble, non-exploding area rug. In the Victorian era, every footstep was a risk assessment. The next time you shuffle across the carpet in socks, just remember, you're not just avoiding a little shock. You're dodging the full, flammable fury of history's most dangerous home decor. Lighting the room is a game of skill and luck. Gaslights flicker with unreliable charm, leaking just enough unburned gas to keep you guessing. Is that a faint headache, or the first sign of unconsciousness? Better light another match. What could go wrong? Let's set the mood. It's dusk in your Victorian sitting room, and the gentle amber glow of the gaslights casts dramatic shadows across the floral wallpaper, shadows that get longer and more ominous as night falls. Outside, the streets are shrouded in fog, but inside, you're doing your best to conquer the darkness with what is essentially controlled indoor combustion. Gaslighting in this context isn't psychological warfare, it's just regular, run-of-the-mill, potentially explosive household lighting. But first, you have to turn it on. This is a whole ritual. You take your long, brass taper and reach up to the wall-mounted fixture, holding your breath as you twist the little knob. Sometimes you get the satisfying pop and gentle hiss of the gas catching flame. Sometimes you get a belch of gas and nothing happens, except now you're standing in a cloud of invisible, flammable mystery. You could open a window, but it's winter and you're not made of money. Instead, you do what any sensible Victorian would do: light another match and hope this one does the trick. The risks are many and subtle. Gaslights are nothing if not democratic with their dangers. They'll poison the poor and the wealthy with equal efficiency. Maybe you notice a sweet, sickly odor in the air, or maybe you don't notice anything at all until your eyelids start drooping and your conversation starts making less and less sense. Congratulations. You're being gently asphyxiated in the comfort of your own home. Was it the lamp, or just the cumulative effects of living with a coal fire, closed windows, and whatever your neighbor has been cooking for dinner? Who can say? Of course, there's the ever-present risk of explosion. The Victorian gas supply isn't known for its reliability or quality control. Leaks are common, and with open flames everywhere, on the mantel, on the wall, in the hands of every child and distracted butler, your odds of living to see electric lighting improve with every second you don't strike a match near a drafty pipe. You may not know this, but somewhere in the next room, a rat is nibbling on the rubber tubing. It's only a matter of time. It's not just your safety at stake. Gaslights are also a hazard to your household belongings, and even your sense of style. The heat from the fixtures bakes the air, dries out the wallpaper glue, and slowly roasts the top of every painting and bookshelf into a crispy shade of Victorian sepia. Curtains that drift too close are liable to catch fire, and if you're really unlucky, the evening's entertainment can quickly shift from charades to a full-scale bucket brigade. Then there's the lighting quality. You'd think gaslight would bathe your home in a golden glow of sophistication, but the reality is more haunted crypt. Shadows loom in corners. Faces are illuminated in ways that make everyone look just a little bit like they've got a secret and a body in the cellar. Want to read? Good luck. You'll need to angle your chair just so, and pray the gas doesn't flicker out halfway through your penny dreadful. If you're hosting a dinner party, the stakes are even higher. Nothing brings a group together quite like the soft panic of suddenly being plunged into darkness. Guests fumble for matches, the dog barks, and someone inevitably mistakes the brandy decanter for the fire bucket. In the chaos, Aunt Gwendolen will almost certainly faint, and the parlour will fill with the twin scents of singed hair and mild hysteria. And don't forget the ever-watchful eyes of the gas company, who will happily bill you for every flicker, every sputter, every silent leak, and every night you spend unconscious from lack of oxygen. Progress never felt so expensive or so hazardous. So tonight, as you flip a switch and your whole room glows instantly without the side effects of a minor chemical attack, spare a thought for your Victorian self. Lighting used to be an adventure. If you made it through an evening with all your eyebrows and brain cells intact, you counted yourself lucky. The darkness, for all its drawbacks, was sometimes the safest part of the night. Central heating is for the unimaginative. You, dear Victorian, have a cast-iron stove that roars with coal and belches carbon monoxide. The warmth is lovely. The gentle, suffocating embrace of invisible gas? Less so. Let's paint the scene. It's a damp winter's morning in your elegant, slightly chilly Victorian home. The air outside is thick with fog, and inside, every surface feels as if it's been kissed by a glacier. But there, in pride of place, sits your new pride and joy. A black, glistening cast-iron stove, gleaming in the corner like the world's most dangerous family pet. With a heave and a shove, you fill its maw with chunks of coal. The iron sings, the pipes rattle, and the whole room is suddenly toasty. A miracle, if you ignore the fact that your lungs are now under siege. This isn't your grandmother's wood-burning hearth. This is modern convenience, Victorian style. You turn a lever, you stoke the fire, and you settle back to enjoy a few fleeting minutes of warmth. What could possibly go wrong? Well, for one, the stove itself is an unpredictable beast. Get too close, and you risk branding yourself with a spiral-shaped burn that will forever mark you as a member of the Touched the Stove Club. Try to adjust the damper without your iron poker, and you might learn the true meaning of blistering regret. And then there's the air itself. You notice it first as a sort of sleepy heaviness, a feeling like you've just eaten a large roast dinner and are about to drift off to napland. But instead of comfort, what's actually happening is that carbon monoxide, silent, odorless, and utterly relentless, is flooding the room. Back then, they called it stove sickness. You might call it accidental self-mummification. The warning signs are subtle: a dull headache, a bit of nausea, maybe a tendency to forget what you came into the room for. By the time you're giggling at your own reflection in the fireplace tongs, it's probably too late. It gets better. The Victorian stove was not just a single-minded killer, it was a multitasker. It cooked your food, it dried your laundry, usually with a pleasant scent of burning wool, and it heated your bathwater. It also attracted children, pets, and clumsy adults like moths to a flame. The stove's exterior could reach skin-searing temperatures, and the handles, dials, and assorted gadgets required the dexterity of a concert pianist to operate without disaster. Ever tried to make porridge while dodging jets of superheated steam? Welcome to breakfast, Victorian style. Maintenance was also an adventure. The stovepipe, meant to carry dangerous fumes out of the house, was more of a polite suggestion than a guarantee. Pipes clogged, soot built up. Every so often, an enterprising squirrel or particularly ambitious pigeon would build a nest right in your chimney, resulting in a gentle rain of soot and, if you were unlucky, a surprise animal guest in your parlour. Your only recourse was to poke the pipes, sweep the flues, and hope you didn't knock anything loose onto the carpet, which, as we've established, is already primed to ignite at the slightest provocation. Let's not forget the fuel itself. Coal delivery was a dirty, back-breaking ritual. The coal man arrived with his wheelbarrow and left a trail of black dust from the street to your scullery. Handling the coal meant stained hands, ruined sleeves, and the faint suspicion that your house would never truly be clean again. And coal wasn't cheap. Skimp on it, and your fire splutters out. Splurge, and you get a room so hot it's 1 degree away from hatching dinosaur eggs. Yet, despite the danger, the stove was the very heart of the Victorian home. Families gathered around it for warmth, stories, and the occasional fainting spell. You learned early to keep a window cracked, to keep the flue clear, and to never, ever fall asleep too close to the glow. The Victorians might not have had central heating, but they did have a remarkable tolerance for risk and an uncanny ability to ignore symptoms as long as the room was toasty. So tonight, as you enjoy the luxury of heat that doesn't threaten to end you, be grateful for central heating, carbon monoxide detectors, and the lack of live coal embers rolling across your floor. In the Victorian era, staying warm was a constant battle, one that claimed many a paisley carpet, and occasionally a relative or two. Tonight's bath involves hauling gallons of water, lighting a gas heater, and hoping nobody bumps the thermostat. The steam is relaxing until the room fills with poison, or, for bonus points, the gas heater explodes. Squeaky clean or slightly charred? It's a toss-up. Let's set the scene. It's been a long, sooty day in Victorian London. Your face is covered in city dust, your hands are sticky with coal residue, and you're craving the one luxury that the era almost, but not quite, made safe, an honest-to-goodness hot bath. But before you can contemplate sinking into a tub, there's work to do. First, you must wrestle with technology that has all the reliability of a toddler with a slingshot. Begin by lugging water from the kitchen or, if you're lucky, from the slightly closer scullery tap. Each bucket is a test of willpower and upper body strength. If you're ambitious, you fill the tub to your chest. If you're realistic, you settle for water that covers your knees and maybe, if the house gods are merciful, your ankles. This process is loud, messy, and guaranteed to leave wet footprints from the kitchen all the way upstairs. And you can forget privacy. Someone is always knocking, shouting, or barging in because Victorians simply could not leave each other alone for 10 minutes. Now comes the main event: heating the water. Enter the gas geyser, a contraption designed to turn ordinary bath night into a game of Russian roulette. The geyser, clamped above the tub with all the confidence of a precariously balanced hat, is meant to heat water on demand. You turn a knob, light a match, and hope the flames remain inside the metal casing instead of erupting in your face. If the pilot goes out, you relight it, bravely, and, if you have any sense, with your head turned away. The manual, if you can find it, features helpful illustrations of people smiling while not on fire, which is frankly misleading. If you get the balance just right, enough gas to heat the water but not so much that you fill the bathroom with carbon monoxide, you're in for a treat. Steamy, relaxing, and just a little bit suspenseful, every Victorian bath is a race against time and physics. Leave the gas running too long, and you'll feel drowsy in a way that has nothing to do with relaxation. It's the warmth, you tell yourself, as the room starts spinning gently. In reality, you're being slowly, silently asphyxiated by invisible fumes. Many an unfortunate Victorian was found dozing in the tub, never to be roused again, all because gas detectors wouldn't be invented for another 100 years. And just to keep things interesting, the geyser is not your only threat. Cast-iron bathtubs have a bad habit of conducting heat a little too well. Pour in water that's even a hair too hot, and you risk cooking your own backside before you've had time to adjust. It's like trying to take a nap in a frying pan. Except the frying pan is also the safest part of the room. Of course, baths are family affairs. If you're not first in line, you're getting into water that's already been used by someone else, maybe several someone else's. Victorian etiquette is silent on whether you should skim off the floating lint, but let's be honest, you do it anyway. Bathing with siblings is encouraged for efficiency, and possibly for comedy. But woe betide anyone who gets soap in their eyes. as Victorian soap is the consistency of granite and only slightly less abrasive. Let's not forget the final act, draining the tub. If your plumbing is modern, you might avoid the worst of the backflow. If not, prepare for an impromptu flood, or in the case of pipe blockages, a geyser of scalding water erupting onto the floorboards. Water stains, warped floorboards, and an air of damp despair. Just the thing to lull you into a peaceful sleep. So tonight, as you run a modern bath and set the thermostat with confidence, remember your Victorian self, braving gas, fire, floods, and the ever-present risk of being found by a neighbour, undignified and slightly steamed. In the 19th century home, cleanliness wasn't just next to godliness, it was a perilous, high-stakes adventure. From water pipes to paint, lead is the foundation of Victorian chic. Sure, it slowly erodes your nervous system, but it makes the paint go on so smooth. It's the flavour of progress. Just don't lick the walls. Let's take a stroll through your home, circa 1885, where every surface is an architectural love letter to lead. The front door creaks open on hinges painted a glossy white, lead white, naturally, the only colour worth using on anything that matters. Step into the hallway, and you're greeted by walls finished in rich, gleaming hues, achieved through generous handfuls of lead pigment. Even the ceiling is a work of art, delicately hand-brushed with a paint so smooth and lustrous it could double as a mirror, if you don't mind the side effect of chronic abdominal pain. But lead isn't just in your paint. Oh no, that would be far too limited for the forward-thinking Victorian. Look down, and you'll spot gleaming water pipes snaking their way through the house like metal veins. Those pipes are pure lead, delivering water from the street straight to your kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom. It's state-of-the-art plumbing, sturdy, long-lasting, and carrying the subtle bonus of dissolving a little lead into every delicious cup of tea. The Victorians called this character. Modern doctors call it neurotoxicity. But they're just jealous of your robust 19th century constitution. It doesn't stop there. Head into the nursery, where you'll find toys painted in the brightest reds and yellows money can buy. Those colours aren't just cheerful, they're the chemical signatures of lead chromate and lead oxide, the backbone of Victorian children's decor. Want to encourage your toddler's creativity? Here's a box of coloured pencils, their vibrant hues generously dusted with lead powder. The taste is memorable. The kitchen is a masterpiece of toxic innovation. Pots and pans are sometimes glazed with lead for a dazzling finish, and imported tins of food may contain lead solder along the seams. The canned peaches taste a little metallic, but that's just the future knocking at your door. Even the wine decanter isn't safe. Crystal glassware gets its brilliance from, you guessed it, lead. It makes every sip sparkle with flavour, and over time, a touch of anemia. For the Victorian homemaker, lead is the secret behind every domestic convenience. It makes paint weatherproof, water pipes reliable, and baby rattles satisfyingly weighty. If you're suffering from headaches, fatigue, or sudden irrational outbursts, don't blame the family, blame the walls, the pipes, and that charming new health tonic sold by the apothecary. Victorian medicine naturally is happy to prescribe you a little more lead to take the edge off. Yes, medicinal lead. It was a thing. You might notice your plants don't thrive. The family pet seems less energetic than usual. The servants' quarters are filled with a persistent, musty odour. These are all subtle hints that your home is less a sanctuary and more a slow-motion experiment in human resilience. The Victorians prided themselves on ignoring warning signs. After all, if a little lead is good, more must be better. Why settle for just lead pipes when you can have lead-based wallpaper, lead-laced cosmetics, and the occasional lead supplement in your morning tonic? Occasionally, some spoil-sport physician would raise the alarm. Perhaps it's not wise to have so much lead about, he might say, after observing a whole street of children with trembling hands and haunted eyes. These concerns were dismissed with a wave, likely by someone whose blood lead levels had reached blissful denial. Real progress can't be stopped by petty details like nerve damage or early death. So tonight, as you sip filtered water and admire your lead-free paint, remember that not so long ago, the height of modern luxury was a home that glittered with promise and poison. In the Victorian age, every convenience came with a hidden cost, paid slowly and invisibly, one brushstroke at a time. And if anyone asks why your walls don't taste metallic, just smile, safe in the knowledge that history really is the best teacher, especially when you don't have to chew on the lesson. You want to impress guests with your electric doorbell, the latest in modern luxury. Unfortunately, the wiring was installed by your cousin and might either summon the maid or electrocute the next visitor. Victorian technology, now with extra voltage. Let's picture the scene. It's a rainy evening in 1891, and you're hosting your most judgmental in-laws for tea. You're determined to demonstrate that your home is at the very bleeding edge of progress. You've invested in wallpaper that glows and, as discussed, might kill you, a parlour rug that doubles as kindling, and now, pride of place by the front door, an electric bell. No more waiting for the butler to hear a meek knock. No, this is the future, delivered by the miracle of household electricity, assuming the miracle doesn't end with a trip to the local apothecary. In theory, the doorbell should be simple. Push the button, and a discreet chime alerts your staff that someone important is here. In practice, it's a carnival of surprises. Electricity is still the new kid on the block, and the average Victorian electrician is really just a man with a mustache, a spool of copper wire, and a casual disregard for the fire code. Your cousin did the installation, mostly because he read about it in a pamphlet and wasn't allowed to practice medicine anymore. Let's talk about the system itself. The bell is powered by a series of batteries, giant, leaky things filled with acid, sitting in the cellar and quietly eating away at your floorboards. The wires snake up the walls, held in place with whatever metal fasteners were on hand. Sometimes, a rat gets a little too curious and, well, the bell rings at 2 a.m. for no earthly reason. Or it never rings at all, leaving your guests waiting on the stoop while the batteries quietly bubble and your cousin promises he'll pop over after supper. Suppose you have a braver-than-average friend who presses the button. What happens next? Maybe the bell rings, and the butler comes scurrying. Or maybe, just maybe, the circuit completes with a satisfying pop, and a modest jolt of current surges through the metal button into your friend's hand. Nothing says welcome to our home quite like a minor electrical burn and a startled yelp that echoes down the street. Of course, you can't admit to your guests that you're a little bit afraid of your own front door. You smile, assure everyone that it's perfectly safe, and make a mental note to handle future deliveries from the back entrance. Your housemaid, who now jumps a foot in the air every time the bell rings, has already started petitioning for a good old-fashioned knocker. There's also the matter of false alarms. Thanks to the wonders of Victorian engineering, your bell can be set off by atmospheric changes, someone slamming a window upstairs, or the simple act of breathing too enthusiastically in the hallway. Sometimes the bell rings and rings, summoning the entire staff to the door for nothing more than the mailman dropping off a bill. Other times, the system fails completely, and the only way to let someone in is to throw a rock at their window or shout until someone hears you over the ticking of a dozen clocks. Maintenance is its own adventure. If the bell stops working, you crawl into the attic, poke at a nest of frayed wires with a screwdriver, and hope nothing explodes. If you're especially unlucky, you discover a battery leak has turned your cellar into a small-scale chemical experiment, best viewed from a safe distance. Your cousin swears he'll fix it. You start planning your next dinner party at someone else's house. Still, there's a certain thrill in owning such an innovation. Each ring is a gamble. Will you receive a guest, a servant, or a short, sharp shock? The Victorians loved technology, especially when it kept everyone on their toes, sometimes literally, to avoid another jolt. So next time you hear your reliable, wireless doorbell chirp, spare a moment of gratitude. In the Victorian era, every guest was greeted with suspense. Every household gadget came with a little danger. and every family gathering had at least a small chance of ending with a hair-raising surprise. That's progress, Victorian style. The Victorian kitchen is a battlefield, and the humble cheese grater is a ruthless foe. Sharp, unguarded, and just waiting to shred fingers along with the cheddar. Nothing says bon appetit like the metallic taste of your own regret. Let's step through the swinging door and take our chances among the pots, pans, and lurking terrors of the average 19th century kitchen. It's a space, packed with cast-iron ambition and the subtle, ever-present whiff of imminent disaster. Nowhere is this more true than at the work table, where cheese, once an innocent dairy product, meets its match in the form of the deadliest kitchen gadget to grace the Victorian countertop, the cheese grater. Unlike its modern descendants, the Victorian cheese grater is not some ergonomic, silicone-gripped safety device. It's a slab of metal bristling with jagged holes, as likely to take a chunk out of your knuckles as your Cheshire. The design philosophy is simple. Maximum surface area, minimal concern for user well-being. No handguard, no instructions, and certainly no warnings, apart from the bloodstains of previous users. Picture the daily cheese ritual. You reach for a block of cheddar, firm, crumbly, and as close to heaven as a Victorian diet allows. You position the grater, hold the cheese, and begin the age-old motion. Scrape, scrape, scrape. At first, all goes well. Ribbons of cheese flutter down onto the board, and for a moment, you're winning at life. But then, without warning, the cheese shrinks, your grip slips. Suddenly, your knuckles are a sacrifice to the dairy gods. The grater shows no mercy. It rewards your dedication with a sharp, stinging reminder that dinner prep is a blood sport. The pain is immediate, the regret is eternal, and the solution is there isn't one. Maybe you run your hand under cold water, wrap it in a rag, and keep going. Hygiene is a relative concept. After all, you're living in an era when kitchens double as apothecaries, laundries, and, occasionally, sites of minor surgery. Dinner guests who find a little extra iron in their macaroni are simply told it's good for their constitution. But the cheese grater isn't alone in its campaign of carnage. The entire kitchen is designed for efficiency at the expense of survival. The knives are honed to a razor's edge, mostly because they double as tools for everything from gutting fish to trimming candle wicks. The potato peeler is a simple strip of metal, only slightly less lethal than a hacksaw. Even the rolling pin is a weapon, doubling as a home defense tool if the neighbor's dog gets too interested in your roast. Still, the cheese grater is in a league of its own. It never tires. It never forgets. And, thanks to the near-constant churn of the Victorian dinner schedule, it's always waiting. Every household has stories. Aunt Millicent's infamous Boxing Day bandage, the time the butler bled on the Welsh rarebit, or the child who learned their letters by reading medical salve on the family ointment jar. The cheese grater. Teaching caution and spelling in equal measure. As if physical peril weren't enough, there's the psychological toll. The grater sits in the drawer, edges glinting, just daring you to reach in for a spoon without looking. It is the original jump scare. Long before horror films, there was kitchenware. Even those lucky enough to emerge from grating duty unscathed are left with hands that smell of both dairy and existential anxiety. Let's not forget the aftermath. Cleaning the grater is its own test of courage and pain tolerance. You must scrub out every hole, working the sponge gingerly, remembering which finger you sacrificed for last night's soufflé. Some Victorian cooks avoid the process entirely, leaving the grater encrusted and haunted by the ghosts of dinners past. Others, more valiant, keep vinegar and rags close at hand and simply accept the cheese grater's rule as absolute and unchallenged. So, next time you shred a bit of cheddar without bloodshed, give thanks for modern design and bandages that don't come from a communal tin. In the Victorian kitchen, culinary achievement wasn't measured in Michelin stars. It was measured in scars. That bright, patterned linoleum looks beautiful, but it's laced with asbestos. Every step releases a dusting of microscopic daggers. The Victorians called it progress. The rest of us call it slow-motion betrayal. Welcome to the dazzling world of Victorian flooring, where every step is a leap of faith and comfort underfoot comes with a generous helping of long-term peril. The newly invented linoleum is the pride of your household, and you show it off with the enthusiasm of a car salesman unveiling a vehicle that explodes if you honk twice. Guests marvel at the elaborate swirls and geometric patterns, each tile a testament to industrial ingenuity and the optimism of a society that believed anything could be improved by sprinkling a little chemistry on top. Linoleum, for the uninitiated, was marketed as a miracle, waterproof, easy to clean, and far more fashionable than those gloomy wooden floorboards or muddy carpets that tried to spontaneously combust. It's made from oxidized linseed oil mixed with cork dust, wood flour, and, in a bold stroke of Victorian genius, a hearty helping of asbestos fibres for durability. In practice, this means your floor is both durable and quietly plotting against you, like a decorative snake coiled beneath your slippers. Every footstep, be it your own, your toddler's, or your mother-in-law's dramatic march to inspect the sideboard, releases a gentle puff of asbestos-laced dust. You can't see it, but your lungs know it's there. Children crawling across the floor pick up more than crumbs. They get a sneak preview of 20th century respiratory medicine. Even your dog is in on the action, shedding hair and collecting asbestos, a loyal companion in both affection and environmental exposure. It doesn't help that Victorians had a robust cleaning schedule. Weekly scrubbing, sweeping, and buffing of the linoleum just served to stir up an extra cloud of fibres, ensuring the danger was spread evenly from nursery to drawing room. Housewives took pride in gleaming floors, unaware that the secret ingredient to that high gloss was industrial sabotage. The more you polished, the more you were rewarded with invisible daggers in the air. There's a reason so many old Victorian houses have their original floors untouched. Even the floorboards know when to quit. The fun doesn't stop with breathing. Linoleum was also a champion at trapping moisture underneath. The tight, impermeable surface kept spills on top but ensured that any leak, spilled tea, or overambitious mopping session was held prisoner below. In a matter of weeks, your easy-to-clean floor transformed into a fungal wonderland. The smell was something between old gym sock and compost heap in a rainstorm, and the sight of mildew creeping up from the edges became a cherished family memory. But, for all its faults, linoleum was aspirational. It was marketed as the floor of the future, a surface that said you'd arrived in the world, even if you were quietly suffocating in style. Kitchens, bathrooms, hallways, no room was safe from the march of linoleum. The advertisements showed smiling families picnicking right there on the floor, blissfully ignorant of what they were inhaling between bites of cucumber sandwich. Occasionally, someone would notice a cough that never quite went away, or a patch of skin that seemed to itch more every month. Doctors might shrug and prescribe a tonic, possibly containing lead or mercury for that full-period experience. No one suspected the floor. Why would they? Progress was meant to hurt a little. It's just that nobody expected it to be delivered underfoot. So tonight, as you pad barefoot across your soft, non-asbestos rug, be grateful for the boring predictability of modern flooring. The next time you see a retro linoleum pattern, admire it from a distance, and perhaps raise a toast to the brave Victorians who walked, scrubbed and danced across their beautiful, treacherous floors, unaware that their every step was a tiny act of historical martyrdom. Sometimes, progress just bites back. Want to keep your facial hair sharp? Victorian moustache waxes contain lead, mercury, or even arsenic for that extra hold. Applying your morning routine is basically rolling the dice on neurological side effects. Let's step up to your ornate Victorian washstand. With its array of mysterious bottles, powders, and unguents, the morning light filters through lace curtains and lands on your proudest feature, the moustache. Not just any moustache, a waxed, sculpted masterpiece, the sort that demands respect, attention, and, unfortunately, medical intervention. Victorian fashion is unforgiving. Anything less than a handlebar curl, stiff enough to deflect a thrown crumpet, is simply not going to cut it at the gentleman's club. But achieving facial perfection comes at a price. Enter the miracle of Victorian moustache wax, sold in tins with splendid typography and promises of unmatched hold and luster. The secret? A cheerful blend of fats, oils, and whatever heavy metal was handy at the chemist's. Lead acetate gives the wax a satiny texture. Mercury lends a certain shine. Arsenic, for reasons lost to history, seems to make the curls last longer. Apply generously and ignore the mild tingling. What's a little neurotoxicity between friends? It's not just the gentleman at risk. Victorian women, equally committed to appearance, slather themselves in face creams, powders and rouges, all of which are laced with ingredients now banned in several galaxies. White lead face powder is the height of fashion, giving the desired ethereal pallor that says, "I haven't seen sunlight, nutrition, or happiness since the Queen's Jubilee." Mercury is used for freckle cream, promising to erase imperfections, and, incidentally, all evidence of cognitive function over time. If you're really committed, there's belladonna eye drops to make your pupils alluringly wide, at the risk of permanent blindness. Beauty is pain, and sometimes beauty is a symptom list. The dangers don't end at application. Throughout the day, you're surrounded by hazards. Each twirl of your moustache introduces a fresh dose of heavy metals to your fingertips, which inevitably migrate to your afternoon tea and sandwich. You admire yourself in the mirror, unaware that the faint tremor in your hand isn't the thrill of self-regard, but mild lead poisoning. The worst part? All your friends are doing it too. Symptoms, headaches, memory loss, irritability are blamed on work, nerves, or the existential dread of living through the Industrial Revolution. At the ladies' side, powdering your face is a communal ritual. You sit with friends, dusting yourselves with clouds of lead and rice powder, laughing as you cough delicately into embroidered handkerchiefs. Rouge comes in seductive shades of vermilion, a pigment derived from mercury. If your cheeks start to tingle and go numb, that's just the price of not looking like a peasant. Lipsticks are made with carmine and sometimes even cochineal beetles, crushed for colour and mixed with whatever was left in the bottom of the apothecary's cupboard. The flavour is distinctly historical. Even children aren't safe. Complexion soap is marketed for the young, promising clear skin with the help of borax, ammonia, and sometimes a little extra arsenic for sparkle. It's the Victorian equivalent of tear-free shampoo, only the tears are real and possibly tinged with toxins. Cosmetic mishaps are the stuff of legend. That waxy sheen on Uncle Percy's moustache? It's not just the wax melting in the summer heat. It's also the slow, tragic melting of his common sense. Aunt Agatha's porcelain skin? It's the result of so many layers of toxic powder that her pores are now permanently sealed, an unbreathable tribute to Victorian beauty standards. So tonight, as you reach for your mild, metal-free moisturizer and dab your lips with safe, boring lipstick, spare a thought for the Victorians. They risked it all for a curl, a shimmer, and a fleeting moment of fashionable glory. Their motto, "If you can't look good, at least go down glowing." In the 19th century bathroom, self-care was just another way to roll the dice with destiny. A steaming cup of tea is the height of civility, assuming your kettle doesn't explode from a blocked pressure valve. The only thing more unpredictable than Victorian plumbing is Victorian plumbing under pressure. Let's set the stage for this most British of dangers. It's a drizzly afternoon in 1893. You're standing in your bustling Victorian kitchen, rain tapping on the window, your nerves soothed only by the promise of a hot cup of tea. Water boils on the range in a shining, state-of-the-art metal kettle, a modern marvel, as comforting as a knitted shawl and as perilous as an unlicensed street magician. It hums, hisses, and, if the stars align, whistles sweetly to let you know it's ready, unless, of course, it decides today is the day to test its limits, and yours. The problem with Victorian kettles is the same problem as with most Victorian inventions: innovation without regulation. These kettles are built for speed, with thick metal walls and ambitious pressure valves that, more often than not, were either stuck, rusted, or installed by someone who'd never actually seen a working kettle. The result? The gentle art of tea-making becomes a daily game of will it, won't it explode? Sometimes, if you're lucky, the worst that happens is a gentle dribble down the spout. Sometimes, though, the kitchen is suddenly filled with a noise like cannon fire and a fine spray of scalding water that sends the cat into early retirement. But don't think the danger ends with a humble kettle. No. The Victorian boiler room is a place of true domestic suspense. These clanking, hissing monsters live in cellars and back corners, responsible for heating the entire house, often by circulating pressurized steam through iron pipes that are only slightly less temperamental than the average Victorian novelist. Every housewife and manservant knows the dread of descending to the boiler room with nothing but a trembling candle and a prayer, hoping the machinery will hum along quietly and not decide, today of all days, to violently rearrange the kitchen floor plan. Maintenance is an act of bravery. Valves clog with limescale, pipes corrode from the inside out, and water builds up in places it definitely shouldn't. If you hear an ominous clank, a strange gurgle, or a shriek like a banshee on laundry day, it's time to either run for help or make peace with your fate. The local plumber, armed with a wrench, mutton chops, and an encyclopedic knowledge of excuses, may or may not be able to help. Most repairs involve hitting something with a mallet and hoping it quiets down. Scalds and burns become badges of honour in the Victorian kitchen. Ask any cook or maid, and they'll show you a map of their greatest injuries: a wrist scar from a surprise jet of steam, a red line from the handle that got too hot, or the unforgettable burn from that one time the kettle let off a geyser when the lid flew open. First aid is a pot of cold water and, if you're lucky, a little butter, Victorian medicine at its most soothing and possibly most misguided. And then, of course, there's the joy of the automatic tea urn, a device that keeps water hot all day, running on clockwork, gas, or wishful thinking. Sometimes these urns, meant for grand gatherings and endless hospitality, simply refuse to work. Other times they overflow, sending boiling water flooding across the table and scalding the ankles of anyone in range. At least you're always ready to mop up, even if the mop now doubles as a minor medical implement. Despite all this, Victorians would not be denied their tea. They risked it all: scalded hands, singed eyebrows, the occasional kitchen catastrophe, for the simple comfort of a hot drink and a moment of peace in an unpredictable world. So the next time you plug in your electric kettle, free from the threat of spontaneous steam geysers, think fondly of your Victorian forebears. Their commitment to tea was nothing short of heroic, even if it occasionally ended with a kitchen full of steam and the lingering scent of near disaster. That fresh loaf of bread may contain chalk, sawdust, or alum. Milk, diluted with river water and a hint of formaldehyde for freshness. Bon appetit. Food regulations are a work in progress. Mostly just work. Step into your Victorian kitchen, where the cupboards are full, the larder is bustling, and every ingredient is playing its own dangerous little guessing game. This is the age of rapid industrialization, when new foods, exotic spices, and colourful candies fill the market stalls. Victorians are proud of their progress. There's more food than ever, more variety, more flavour, and unfortunately, more ways to get sick without ever leaving the comfort of your own home. Let's start with the bread, the very cornerstone of every meal. The soft, white loaf sitting on your table looks innocent enough, but it has secrets. In a world where profit margins matter more than the health of your intestines, bakers stretch their flour with whatever's handy: chalk for colour, sawdust for bulk, alum to keep it white and fluffy, and sometimes a pinch of ground bone for that extra hearty texture. If it tastes a little gritty or your sandwich bites back, that's not your imagination. It's industrial innovation. Children's teeth were never whiter, mainly because they were pre-coated in minerals meant for the schoolhouse slate. Milk, meanwhile, is a high-stakes lottery. You want it fresh? So does everyone else. But keeping milk from turning to cheese in the time it takes to walk home from the dairy is nearly impossible. The answer? Water it down with whatever's available, tap water, well water, or that nice brown stuff from the river. To disguise the flavour and the colour, sellers add plaster of Paris, chalk, or a drop or two of formaldehyde, which preserves freshness in much the same way embalming fluid does. Think of it as the original long-life milk, now with bonus digestive distress. It gets better. Victorian sugar is rarely just sugar. It might include sand or even a sprinkle of ground limestone to help it flow. Sweets, those brightly coloured candies you hand your children, are often dyed with lead, copper, or arsenic, all in the name of eye-catching allure. If your tongue goes numb or your teeth ache after a boiled sweet, that's the spirit of Victorian enterprise giving you a personalised taste of the chemical revolution. But nothing outdoes the spice rack. Black pepper can be bulked up with ground seeds, dirt, or even powdered charcoal. Cayenne is coloured with red lead. Mustard is stretched with turmeric, flour, and a little bit of brick dust for good measure. The more your food glows under candlelight, the more you should worry about its atomic number. And the meat? Let's just say refrigeration is an aspiration, not a reality. Meat was sold at open-air stalls, aged on the hoof, and then left hanging in a damp cellar for as long as you could stomach the smell. If it turned green, you might scrape off the worst bits and stew it into submission, masking the taste with generous helpings of, surprise, more adulterated spices. Perhaps the most notorious treat of all is the Victorian penny sweet. Sold to eager children by the bagful, these candies often glistened with colours so unnatural they could be spotted by passing birds. Red sweets? Dyed with mercury sulfide. Green? Arsenic, of course. Blue? Copper sulfate, which was better known for killing weeds than feeding children. The phrase "like a kid in a candy shop" had far more literal and lethal implications. Food safety campaigns were in their infancy, mostly limited to finger-wagging editorials and the occasional dramatic court case. But in the home, there was little to do but hope, pray, and invest in a sturdy constitution. If you didn't get sick from the food, you probably just hadn't eaten enough. So tonight, as you munch on your safely packaged, regulated snacks, spare a thought for your Victorian self, bravely navigating a pantry where every meal was a leap of faith. In an age when flavour came with a side of mystery, you learned to savour every bite and to keep the baking soda handy, just in case. Keeping pests at bay means deploying spring-loaded traps with all the subtlety of a bear trap. They catch rats. Sometimes they catch your hand, your pet, or the bottom of your dressing gown. Let's shuffle into the shadowy corners of your Victorian home, the realm of scurrying feet, ominous squeaks, and the daily battle for dominance against the local rodent population. Forget the charming mouse in the storybooks. The rats of Victorian England are not here for polite conversation. They're large, hungry, and frighteningly clever. They treat your pantry like a free buffet and your floorboards like an open invitation. Of course, you have to fight back, and that means rat traps, one of the few inventions of the era designed with more brutality than subtlety. Picture the Victorian rat trap, a chunk of iron, a wooden base, a wire strong enough to tether a rowboat, and a spring coiled with the tension of 1,000 unresolved family arguments. The instructions? Place some bait, set the trap, and wait for the inevitable snap. The good news? It works. The bad news? It works on anything that happens to cross its path, including you, your cat, or any unfortunate guest who mistakes it for a footstool in the dark. Setting the trap is an act of daring. You crouch down, holding your breath, fingers trembling as you press the bar into place. listening for the telltale click that lets you know you're seconds from either success or a hospital visit. Just one slip, and the trap bites down with the merciless force of industrial progress. There's a reason every Victorian family kept a bottle of laudanum in the kitchen drawer. Sometimes, dinner prep ends with a minor finger amputation and a gentle reminder to keep one's hands to oneself. The unpredictability is part of the fun. Traps hidden under dressers, behind the stove, or tucked in the coal bin are supposed to keep you safe. But in practice, they lurk in the gloom, ready to clamp down on anything softer than iron. Walking through your own house at night becomes an obstacle course. You shuffle carefully, listening for the soft groan of the floorboards and praying your dressing gown isn't trailing just a little too close to the danger zone. And let's talk about maintenance. The only thing more dangerous than setting the trap is emptying it. Sometimes you find what you're looking for, a rat, dispatched with efficiency. Sometimes it's the family dog, nursing a wounded paw and looking at you with the deep, wordless disappointment only pets can manage. More than a few children have learned a memorable lesson about curiosity by poking at the trap when they thought no one was watching. It's the Victorian equivalent of don't touch the stove, except the punishment is instant and mechanical. The ingenuity of the traps doesn't end with the classic spring-loaded design. Enterprising Victorians also tried poison, glue, and even elaborate bucket contraptions, each with their own list of side effects. Poisoned bait meant you never quite knew where you'd find the aftermath. Sometimes it was under the floorboards, sometimes behind the wainscoting, and sometimes in the Sunday roast, don't ask. Glue traps left you with a stuck and extremely angry rodent, requiring either steely resolve or a very long-handled broom. Of course, you might decide to outsource the problem, get a cat perhaps, or even a small terrier. But then you discover that, in a house full of traps, your furry companions are as likely to get caught as the pests they're supposed to chase. Many a Victorian pet earned their battle scars not from heroic ratting, but from a late-night encounter with the family's arsenal of anti-rodent technology. So tonight, as you hear the comforting silence of your pest-free, trap-free home, spare a moment for your Victorian self, dodging trip hazards and spring-loaded dangers in the name of cleanliness and dignity. Every victory over a rodent came with a risk, a yelp, and the possibility of sporting a new bandage at the breakfast table. In the world of Victorian home maintenance, sometimes the cure was almost as bad as the problem, and a lot more likely to snap when you least expected it. Sofas and armchairs are stuffed with horsehair, straw, or mysterious reclaimed materials. The only thing fluffier than the cushions is the colony of bacteria making itself at home inside. Let's take a seat in your proud Victorian parlour, surrounded by elegant chairs and sumptuous settees, all dressed in the finest patterned velvets and brocades. The Victorians were obsessed with comfort, or at least the appearance of it. Plump cushions and overstuffed armrests beckon invitingly, promising a soft landing after a long day of dodging gas leaks, rat traps, and questionable cheese. But as you sink into your favourite chair, you might notice a suspicious crinkle, a musty waft, or a sneeze rising from the depths of the upholstery. This, dear listener, is not just a chair, it's a petri dish with fringe. Victorian upholstery is a marvel of the age, mostly because it managed to combine the best qualities of softness, bulk, and microbiological surprise. Horsehair was the gold standard, prized for its resilience and bounce. And what could be more wholesome than a cushion filled with equine leftovers? Each time you sit, the horsehair shifts and settles, stirring up a gentle breeze of dust and whatever else was living on the original horse. If you're lucky, it's just a whiff of barnyard nostalgia. If you're less lucky, it's the ghost of hay fever past. But horsehair was expensive, and the average household had to improvise. Enter the age of reclaimed stuffing. Whatever happened to be lying around the factory, stable, or, on a really bad day, the streets. Straw was a favourite, easy to collect, easy to hide inside a cushion, and the natural habitat for a wide variety of tiny, biting creatures. Over time, the straw broke down, settling into a sort of organic compost heap, a hotbed for mold, mites, and the odd fungal colony. You might notice an odd squish or hear a crunch beneath you, but it's best not to investigate too closely. Curiosity is not rewarded in Victorian interior design. And let's not forget about flock, a recycled textile filler made from shredded bits of old clothing, mattress ticking, or whatever else needed a second act. Not only does this save money, but it also ensures your chair is a vibrant tapestry of community history, complete with the bacteria, lice eggs, and dust from a dozen households. Each sit-down is an act of communion with strangers. Cleaning these masterpieces is a task for the brave. There's no vacuum cleaner, only a good beating with a carpet rod, and a sunny day, both of which happen about as frequently as Victorian plumbing repairs. Beating the upholstery sends up clouds of dust, old feathers, and invisible pathogens. If you're very unlucky, it may also trigger a sudden escape of living residents, a beetle here, a flea there, a mouse making a run for it across the drawing room. The Victorian solution? Ignore it. Spray a little rose water, and hope your guests are too polite to mention the itching. Of course, disease was part of the package. Every cold, cough, and childhood fever found a cozy home in the depths of the parlour furniture. Doctors of the day might warn you about miasma or bad airs, never suspecting that your favourite chaise longue was quietly stockpiling germs for the next family gathering. And woe betide the person who fell asleep on the settee during flu season. You might wake up refreshed, or you might wake up with a rash that could be classified as historic. Pets adored these plush thrones too. Cats nested in the cushions, dogs burrowed in armchairs, and both contributed their own generous supply of fur, dander, and questionable smells. Victorian upholstery was, if nothing else, inclusive. Everyone was welcome, humans, animals, and microorganisms alike. So as you flop down tonight onto your sanitized, hypoallergenic foam-stuffed sofa, breathe easy. Spare a moment of gratitude for modern upholstery, washable covers, and the miracle of not sharing your seat with a Victorian ecosystem. In the old days, comfort came with a side of contagion, and the only thing thicker than your cushions was the cloud of bacteria lurking inside. The coal delivery man arrives with a cheerful whistle and drops a ton of fuel down the chute, right onto anyone unlucky enough to be standing below. Home heating meets home flattening. Let's descend into the unsung underbelly of the Victorian house. The coal cellar. Every home in this age of soot and progress depended on a steady stream of coal to keep the stove burning, the kettle humming, and the bath water at least somewhat above freezing. But before you can enjoy the cozy glow of a living room fire, you must first survive the adventure known as Coal Delivery Day, a routine event that doubles as a household trust exercise and an impromptu demonstration of physics. It begins with the familiar rattle of iron wheels and the unmistakable cry of the coalman, whose optimism is only rivaled by his disregard for health and safety. The coal wagon rolls up, and out comes the delivery man, sacks slung over his shoulder, boots trailing a path of black dust from the street to your doorstep. You might think you're prepared, but unless you've barricaded the cellar door and posted a sentry at the chute, you're rolling the dice. The chute itself is a marvel of industrial engineering. A steep, narrow tunnel from the street down to your basement, designed to funnel hundreds of pounds of loose coal with the elegance of a landslide. The coalman empties his sack, and gravity does the rest. Coal rockets down the chute, hitting the cellar floor with a thunderclap. If the hatch isn't closed or someone happens to be tidying up below, it's less of a delivery and more of a black avalanche. Accidents are frequent. Servants on cleaning duty or unlucky family members checking on the last delivery have found themselves buried in a mountain of fuel, forced to claw their way to daylight, trailing bits of anthracite from their pockets for days. The cellar stairs, inevitably slick with coal dust, become a treacherous slope. Many a Victorian sprained an ankle, broke a wrist, or simply lost the will to descend again until spring. But coal doesn't just present dangers during delivery. Storing it is a constant battle. Coal dust settles on every surface, coating the air in a fine, sooty mist. No matter how careful you are, every trip to fetch a shovelful for the stove ends with blackened hands, smeared cheeks, and a faint taste of carbon in your teeth. Any white laundry hanging nearby is doomed. Children sent to the cellar return looking like chimney sweeps, and the family dog can spend weeks looking like he's auditioning for a gothic novel. Coal also brings with it uninvited guests. The damp, dark cellar is a paradise for rats, insects, and the occasional bold neighborhood cat. These creatures treat the coal heap like a luxury apartment, emerging at night to sample your stores or, on a particularly unlucky day, to surprise the coal fetcher with a sudden movement. Victorian homeowners quickly learned to bring a lantern and a broom when venturing into the depths. And then there's the risk of spontaneous combustion. Coal dust, if allowed to accumulate in piles, can ignite under the right conditions, leading to fires that start mysteriously and with alarming enthusiasm. More than one family has had to explain to the fire brigade that their living room was ablaze not because of negligence, but because their cellar was hosting a surprise bonfire. Despite all this, the coal delivery ritual was essential. It marked the rhythm of the seasons, the bustle of industry, and the inescapable need to keep the hearth burning. For all its chaos and danger, coal meant comfort, warmth, and survival through winter's chill. So the next time you crank up your thermostat or press a button for heat, spare a thought for the Victorian coal cellar, a place where a hot bath or a warm meal started with a minor catastrophe and a mountain of black dust. Indoor plumbing is for the posh. Most homes rely on chamber pots, portable, convenient, and prone to being knocked over in the dark, creating a biohazard your Roomba can't handle. Let's stumble through a night in a typical Victorian household, when nature calls and you answer, not with a trip down the hall, but with a deep sigh and a quick glance under the bed. There, in all its glory, sits the family chamber pot. If you're lucky, it's decorated with cheerful flowers, or a bit of blue and white pattern, as if a sprig of painted roses could make this whole business any less grim. Welcome to the world before flush toilets, a place where every trip to the loo is a stealth mission and gravity is your greatest foe. Chamber pots are marvels of 19th century engineering, in the sense that they're a ceramic bowl and not much else. In an era obsessed with propriety, there's something wonderfully absurd about the fact that everyone, from the matriarch to the housemaid, uses the same basic technology as the family cat. Find a discreet corner, do your business, hope nobody notices. Privacy is a luxury. If you're sharing a room, and you almost always are, the sound of someone quietly shuffling the pot across the floor is your midnight lullaby. "Excuse me, I just need to" becomes the most whispered phrase of the Victorian night. Morning is when the real fun begins. Chamber pots must be emptied, and this is usually delegated to the youngest, least powerful member of the household, or, if you're very wealthy, the servant who lost a bet. The route to the back garden or privy is fraught with peril, stairs, rugs, and the dreaded moment when a heavy, sloshing pot meets a stray cat or a carelessly dropped book. One wrong move, and your entire day starts with a clean-up operation and the kind of language not found in etiquette manuals. If you think this is unsanitary, you are absolutely right. Spills are common. Overflow is inevitable. The results, let's just say, require an iron stomach and a willingness to view bodily functions as a team sport. And that's just inside the bedroom. Once the contents are dispatched to the backyard, privy, or, in cities, into the nearest street drain, the cycle begins again. Public health is a pipe dream, and the upstairs splash zone is less an occasional mishap and more a way of life. Of course, the chamber pot has a posh cousin, the bedpan, a flatter, oval dish with a spout, beloved by the sick, elderly, or anyone too exhausted to face the long trek to the backyard in the rain. Bedpans are cold, hard, and prone to unexpected leaks, the sort that force you to change all the bedding and possibly consider moving to a different city. If you happen to be visiting a slightly wealthier home, you might find an indoor thunderbox, an imposing wooden commode with a seat over a removable container. It's the height of luxury, provided you have someone else to do the emptying. The lucky few with early plumbing are envied by everyone else, though even their pipes freeze in winter, sending everyone back to the chamber pot for one more round of indignity. Children, of course, find ways to turn this into sport. The who can carry the fullest pot without spilling contest is a staple of Victorian childhood. Pets get in on the act as well. Cats, dogs, and even the occasional goose have been known to tip over pots, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. More than one parent has discovered a new level of patience after cleaning up an accidental flood at 2 a.m. So tonight, as you flush your toilet with a single finger and listen to the soothing gurgle of pipes, send up a silent thank you for modern plumbing. In the Victorian world, every chamber pot was a ticking time bomb, every trip to the backyard a cold, humbling adventure, and every upstairs rug a potential casualty. In a house without plumbing, a good night's sleep meant never hearing the unmistakable splash from the room above. Feeling under the weather? Victorian medicine cabinets, brim with laudanum, arsenic, and cocaine. The label says guaranteed relief, which is true if you define relief as a complete loss of consciousness. Let's open the creaky cabinet above the wash basin, where every bottle is labelled with a flourish and every cure has at least a fighting chance of being worse than the illness. Welcome to the golden age of patent medicines, a world in which every malady, from mild sniffles to existential dread, can be treated with a mysterious potion whose list of ingredients reads like the periodic table's wildest dreams. It's 1884 and you're feeling a little off. Maybe it's the arsenic wallpaper, maybe it's the after effects of last night's cheese grater incident, or maybe it's the existential realization that you live in a home filled with combustible furniture. Whatever the reason, you reach for your trusty bottle of Mrs. Goodbody's revivifying elixir. The label promises swift, soothing, and absolutely safe relief. And you know you can trust it, because it's endorsed by a man with a top hat and a walrus mustache in a woodcut on the box. What's actually inside that elixir? The short answer, a little bit of everything. The long answer, laudanum, that's tincture of opium, a dash of alcohol, and perhaps a touch of chloroform for the nervous. If you're lucky, there's just enough morphine to make you feel like you're floating on a cloud of Victorian progress. If you're not, well, you probably won't care about your symptoms anymore. Children aren't spared. Teething baby? Try Mother's Little Helper. A syrup laced with soothing morphine and a suggestion to give baby as much as required until the crying stops, which, come to think of it, might be a while. Cough? Doctor. Bernie's bronchial drops contain cocaine to open the airways and a healthy shot of menthol to make sure you feel something, at least. The results: fewer coughs, more naps, and an entire generation of children who look permanently dazed in every family portrait. Arsenic isn't just for the wallpaper. It's also in your tonic water, face cream, and sometimes even the pills for restoring vitality. A little bit of arsenic was believed to clear the complexion and strengthen the nerves. For the fashionable, weekly arsenic wafers are all the rage, guaranteeing that pale, luminous look that says I might faint, but at least I'll look fantastic doing it. Even the most everyday ailments are met with potions of staggering potency. Sore throat? Try a lozenge with a dose of belladonna. Yes, that's deadly nightshade, but just a smidge. Nerves? Valerian root spiked with alcohol and a whisper of ether will calm you down. Insomnia? Chloroform drops, or, for the heavy sleepers, a cotton ball soaked in ether left by the bedside. Sleep tight, says the label, and see you in the morning, we hope. The best part: all of these miracle cures are completely unregulated. Anyone with a flair for advertising and a knack for mixing things in a washtub can launch a new product. You might see testimonials from famous actors, bishops, or even members of parliament, all claiming to have been restored to vigour by a remedy that would now get its creator locked up by the FDA. Side effects are rarely mentioned, unless you count the phrase not to be taken by the faint of heart, small children, or horses as adequate warning. And if, Against all odds, you do survive your illness and your treatment. Congratulations. You've made it through another day in a world where the line between medicine and misadventure is as thin as the glass on your favorite bottle of hair restorative, now with extra mercury for shine. So, as you tuck away your ibuprofen and complain about the taste of cough syrup, spare a sympathetic thought for your Victorian self. In those days, feeling better was easy. All you needed was a sturdy stomach, a sense of adventure, and a medicine cabinet stocked like a chemistry set on payday. Relief was always within reach, even if it occasionally knocked you out cold. No chimney guard, plenty of flammable curtains, and a roaring fire mean that a cozy evening can turn into an impromptu housewarming party, emphasis on warming. Let's gather in the most inviting spot of any Victorian home, the drawing room hearth. Flickering light plays on the wallpaper, arsenic green naturally, casting dramatic shadows and inviting everyone to bask in the gentle heat of the open fireplace. The Victorians knew how to make a room feel inviting, even if the invitation included a not-so-small risk of spontaneous combustion. A true Victorian fire is more than a heat source. It's the centerpiece of the evening, the source of warmth, conversation, and roughly 70% of the average household's annual anxiety. Getting it started is a point of pride. You heap coal or wood onto the grate, strike a match, and try not to inhale too much coal dust or set your sleeves alight in the process. The fire catches, the flames leap, and the familiar smell of burning fills the room, a sign that the night can truly begin. But before you get too cozy, take a look around. Notice anything flammable? Perhaps the heavy velvet curtains hanging dangerously close to the hearth, or the tasseled tablecloth fluttering on the sideboard, placed just within reach of a stray ember. Or maybe the elaborate array of decorative paper fans, doilies, and artificial flowers, the Victorian version of a tinderbox, beautifully arranged for maximum hazard. You might think a chimney guard would be standard. You'd be wrong. Guards were available, but in the grand tradition of Victorian safety, often considered optional, like handrails on staircases or lead-free drinking water. Instead, you simply hoped for the best and kept a rug handy, just in case you needed to smother a minor blaze before it became a full-scale insurance claim. Children and pets were frequent participants in these impromptu fire drills. Cats loved to curl up on the warm hearth, tails flicking dangerously close to the coals, while children tested the limits of both curiosity and their parents' patience by poking at the fire with iron tongs. The phrase "don't play near the fire" was less a rule and more a gentle suggestion, usually followed by a brief, panicked sprint to fetch the water bucket. If the fire was too smoky, that was a different challenge entirely. Victorian chimneys were notorious for their talent at accumulating soot and, occasionally, small wildlife. A blocked flue could turn a cozy evening into a gas attack, with smoke pouring into the room and sending everyone coughing and scrambling for fresh air. If the problem persisted, it was time to call the chimney sweep, a professional armed with brushes, a winning smile, and the lung capacity of a minor deity. Or, if you couldn't afford professional help, you might send up a child. After all, who better to clear a flue than someone with nimble fingers and a suspiciously low value on the family insurance policy? Fires weren't just a risk indoors. A stray ember could easily drift out into the hallway or catch a loose thread, setting off a slow-motion disaster that snaked through the house faster than you could say bucket brigade. Many Victorians kept a pail of sand or water nearby, ready to do battle with flames at a moment's notice. But with matches, candles, and gas lamps everywhere, it was only a matter of time before a cozy evening became an epic tale for future family reunions. The aftermath of a minor fire was often handled with admirable understatement. A scorched rug? Simply turn it over. A singed curtain? Replace it, eventually. That suspiciously bare patch on the mantel? Artistic choice. The real trick was acting as if nothing had happened, greeting your guests with poise and composure while the smell of burnt velvet wafted through the air. So tonight, as you flip a switch for instant heat and marvel at the miracle of central heating, spare a thought for your Victorian ancestors. For them, every evening by the fire was a thrilling dance between comfort and chaos, a ritual of warmth tinged with just enough danger to keep things interesting. The only thing hotter than the hearth was the chance your living room would be trending in the neighborhood gossip by morning. Narrow, steep, and poorly lit, the servants' staircase is the scene of many a twisted ankle and flying tray. Health insurance? Never heard of her. Let's slip into the hidden corridors of the Victorian house, where the glittering world of gaslit drawing rooms and dangerous moustache wax gives way to a backstairs reality that's far less glamorous and far more hazardous. The servants' staircase. A marvel of compact design, if by compact you mean built specifically to challenge the limits of human balance and optimism. The grand front stairway is all sweeping curves and gleaming banisters, but the one your staff uses is a study in architectural cruelty. You won't find plush carpets or sturdy railings here. These stairs are barely a foot wide, just steep enough to threaten your dignity and several bones every time you descend. If you're lucky, there's a thin thread of a handrail. If you're not, there's nothing but the comforting presence of a wall and your own questionable sense of depth perception. The wood creaks ominously with every step, and in winter, the whole staircase turns slick as a skating rink, courtesy of shoes dusted with coal, grease, or whatever else was picked up in the kitchen below. And did we mention the lighting? Or, rather, the near-total absence of it. Electricity hasn't reached the hidden corners of the house, and candles are a luxury reserved for the front hall. At best, there's a battered oil lamp at the bottom of the stairs, casting just enough light to show you how steep the next 3 steps are before you're swallowed by shadow. Every journey up or down becomes a suspenseful episode of Victorian Ninja Warrior, complete with the threat of tripping over a stray boot or slipping on a forgotten coal scuttle. Now, imagine you're not just climbing the stairs, but doing so while carrying a tray of hot tea, a basket of laundry, or an armful of firewood. The Victorian servant is nothing if not ambitious. You balance the day's roast with one hand, hold your skirts with the other, and pray your knees hold out for one more trip. If you're lucky, you reach the top unscathed. If not, dinner comes with a surprise serving of gravy and a bonus concussion. Crashes and tumbles are not rare. The morning may begin with a sharp yelp and the clatter of silverware cascading down the steps. Broken crockery is a fact of life, and so are bruises in places you didn't know you had. No one keeps track of minor injuries, because the options for reporting them are A. Rub some goose grease on it, B. Walk it off, or C. Hope the housekeeper doesn't notice the limp. And yet, for all the chaos, these staircases are a vital artery in the body of the house. It's how breakfast appears as if by magic in the dining room, how laundry travels invisibly from bedroom to backyard, and how news, gossip, and the occasional stray cat move between floors. The servant who can manage the stairs at speed, with full hands and dry feet, is a quiet hero, though rarely celebrated, except perhaps with a larger serving of pudding and the grudging respect of the butler. Of course, every house has its horror stories. The night the scullery maid tumbled down 3 flights with a basket of sheets. The butler who slipped on a stray potato and ended up delivering sherry and a slapstick performance in the same moment. And, of course, the mystery of the missing candlestick, which turned up months later, wedged between 2 steps along with a very flat mouse. So tonight, as you glide effortlessly up your broad, well-lit staircase, spare a thought for the Victorians, and especially their staff, who risked life and limb dozens of times a day, all to keep the house running like clockwork. In the Victorian home, the servants' staircase wasn't just a shortcut, it was an extreme sport. And the prize for surviving it? A bruised shin, a good story, and the right to complain about the stairs until next Christmas. The nursery is a wonderland of choking hazards, lead-painted dolls and stuffed animals filled with the leftovers from your mattress. A fun surprise in every mouthful. Step softly into the Victorian nursery, a pastel paradise bursting with toys, laughter, and approximately 14 different health and safety violations per square foot. The air smells of talcum powder, coal smoke, and just a hint of mystery, because nothing in this room is what it seems, and very little in it has been tested for anything except the patience of an exhausted nanny. Let's start with the centerpiece of every toy collection, the doll. Victorian dolls are masterpieces of craftsmanship, delicately painted and dressed in miniature finery. But there's a catch. The paint, chosen for its brilliant color and lasting shine, is laced with lead, and sometimes even a dash of mercury for good measure. Little Susie's doll may have porcelain cheeks that gleam in the sunlight, but after an hour of enthusiastic hugs, kisses, and the occasional nibble, Susie's likely absorbed more heavy metals than a coal miner on a bad day. Stuffed animals are no safer. Teddy bears haven't been invented yet, so children cuddle with an assortment of soft creatures sewn from cast-off scraps, discarded lace, and whatever fabric didn't make the cut for the parlor curtains. The stuffing is horsehair, straw, or, for the lucky, the cleanest rags in the laundry basket. For the unlucky, it's mystery filling, which might include sawdust, old stockings, or a lost button or two. Every squeeze is an adventure. Every nap risks a cloud of dust and a fresh bout of sneezing. If the toy starts to move on its own, it's not haunted. It's just home to a thriving community of Victorian dust mites. Blocks, marbles, and building sets line the shelves, all sized just right for a small child's hand, and, inconveniently, a small child's windpipe. Choking hazards are a design feature, not a flaw. Each block is a potential dental mishap, each marble an invitation to a panicked sprint for the nearest adult. The rocking horse is majestic and dangerously top-heavy, launching more than one child into orbit before tea time. As for board games, they come with pieces sharp enough to double as lockpicks and instructions that require a knowledge of Greek tragedy to decipher. Let's not forget the ever-popular tin soldiers and clockwork toys, wound by eager hands until the spring snaps or a metal limb comes flying off. Many of these wonders are painted with the same cheerful pigments as the dolls. Again, lead all the way down. Bored of soldiers? Why not play with your magic lantern, a small kerosene-powered projector that brings fairy tales to life and occasionally threatens to set the nursery curtains on fire? Even the safety toys come with their own risks. Jump ropes are made from rough hemp that shreds the skin, and hoops are chased through the hallways, threatening to trip up anyone unlucky enough to get in the way. The jack-in-the-box delivers not only a scare but sometimes a broken nose, depending on the vigor of the spring. And let's not talk about the chemistry sets, which contain substances banned in most modern countries and instructions that read like a recipe for how to make the house explode. If a toy breaks, it's not thrown away. Heavens no. It's repaired with the nearest available glue, which might be animal-based, smelly, arsenic-based, deadly, or flour and water, delicious if you're a mouse. Children share their toys, and by extension, every cold, rash, and mysterious itch known to Victorian medicine. So tonight, as you tuck your child in next to a hypoallergenic, washable stuffed animal, spare a kind thought for the children of the past, who braved every nap and playtime as a minor health hazard. Their toys may have been cursed, but their imaginations were boundless, and so, occasionally, were the contents of their stomachs. In the Victorian nursery, every day was an adventure, and every toy was a leap of faith. Victorians love a good houseplant, and parlour palms are all the rage. Unfortunately, overwatered soil becomes a mould farm faster than you can say respiratory infection. Let's wander into the heart of your tastefully decorated Victorian drawing room, where the flickering gaslight bounces off a jungle of greenery. Houseplants are the latest fad, especially parlour palms, ferns, and exotic curiosities imported from every corner of the empire. It's not enough to have nice wallpaper, though it is of course laced with arsenic. Your guests must be greeted by the sight of healthy green foliage. Bonus points if your palm is so massive it blocks the view of your neighbour's questionable wallpaper, and perhaps half the window as well. The trouble begins with the watering can. The Victorians, so proud of their newfound access to running water and scientific methods, have little idea how much hydration a potted palm actually wants. The answer, it turns out, is less than you think. But who can resist an extra dash? Every day, someone splashes a little more around the roots, determined to keep the leaves glossy and the neighbours jealous. And so, beneath that elegant ceramic pot, a little swamp begins to form. Soon enough, the air takes on a certain scent, earthy, with just a hint of must. No one mentions it, of course. That would be rude. Besides, it's probably just the coal smoke, or the dog, or someone's mysterious cheese. But if you get too close, you'll notice it. The unmistakable aroma of rot, quietly brewing beneath a blanket of damp soil and optimistic Victorian ambition. What you don't see are the spores. Not the sort that make mushrooms, though a keen eye might notice a few small, strange growths around the base of the pot, like nature's own warning label. No, these are the fine, invisible fungal spores rising into the air every time someone bumps the table or pulls back the curtain to let in a shaft of precious sunlight. Spores that float, settle, and take root wherever they please, cushions, curtains, the inside of your lungs. The more plants you have, the more you're essentially living in a well-decorated petri dish. To the Victorians, a cough is just the chill, a sniffle is the season, and mysterious fatigue is probably nerves or bad air. They wouldn't dream of blaming the aspidistra for the family's wheezing or the creeping mildew that's taken up residence behind the piano. Instead, they soldier on, proud of their collection of ferns and cuttings, oblivious to the fact that each breath is just a tiny bit more agricultural than last week. Houseplants aren't just a risk to your lungs. Overwatered soil attracts fungus gnats, tiny flying menaces that appear by the dozen, zipping around the lamp and occasionally landing in the sugar bowl. The dog, naturally, tries to eat them. The cat tries to catch the dog. Meanwhile, mold creeps across the surface of the soil in delicate, lacy patterns, like a science experiment gone only slightly wrong. If you have staff, this becomes their problem. The parlour maid is responsible for dusting the leaves, wiping down the pots, and discreetly disposing of any withered foliage before it sparks questions about her work ethic. She wages a quiet war against mildew, armed only with a rag, a bottle of rosewater, and the hope that the lady of the house will never notice the small forest thriving behind the sofa. Victorians believed houseplants cleansed the air, brought a sense of tranquility, and demonstrated one's good taste and moral character. The reality? Each palm and fern was a potential time bomb of allergens, mold, and tiny unwelcome guests, quietly contributing to the family's robust collection of mysterious ailments. So tonight, as you water your lone, non-toxic houseplant and open a window for a breeze, spare a thought for your Victorian alter ego, living life one mold spore at a time, bravely battling fungal colonies in the name of domestic splendor. In the parlour, as in life, it turns out too much enthusiasm and too much water can really make you sick. The new kerosene lamp promises bright light and almost no explosions. The fine print should just read, "Keep away from children, pets, curtains, and hope." Step into a Victorian evening and take a look around the parlour. The lamps are lit, the gas lights flicker, and on the side table, glowing bravely through the gloom, is your newest household miracle, the kerosene lamp. This is modern lighting, a symbol of progress, and, if you're not careful, a swift reminder that every innovation comes with a disclaimer written in invisible ink and nervous glances. The Victorians, never ones to shy away from a technological leap, embraced kerosene lamps for their affordability and convenience. You too can now fill your home with radiant light, assuming you're willing to juggle a glass reservoir full of highly flammable oil and an open flame. It's as easy as pie, if the pie happens to be served flaming and perched on a wobbly pedestal. You fill the reservoir, turn up the wick, and strike a match, all while keeping an eye out for pets, children, and the nearest exit. Once the lamp is burning, the glow is genuinely lovely, softer and steadier than a candle, stronger than the average gas sconce, and just bright enough to read your penny dreadful, or spot the spider in your teacup. But the real excitement starts when you need to refill it. Spilling a little kerosene is inevitable, and now the entire table smells like a petrol station in August. The more nervous among us keep a damp rag nearby. The truly wise keep a fire bucket and a will. Let's talk about the dangers lurking beneath the warm glow. First, the lamp chimney. A delicate tube of glass that has, at best, a 50% survival rate on any given night. Bump the lamp, set it down too hard, or let a child wave a toy in its general direction, and you'll be picking shards from the carpet until Christmas. If the glass cracks while the lamp is lit, you'll get a dazzling, terrifying demonstration of what happens when a fire meets kerosene vapor. The wick is another temperamental companion. Turn it too high, and you'll get a flare-up, blackening the ceiling and occasionally igniting the lampshade. Turn it too low, and the flame sputters, producing choking smoke that sends everyone coughing into their handkerchiefs. Then there's the delicate art of trimming the wick. Too ragged, and it burns unevenly. Too short, and the lamp flickers itself out, leaving you in a darkness that feels suddenly, pointedly, ominous. If you're lucky enough to have small children or curious pets, congratulations! The kerosene lamp is now the centerpiece of household suspense. Cats leap onto tables, dogs wag tails with abandon, and one careless bump can send a burning lamp crashing to the floor. Victorian insurance policies, for the very rich, include a section for domestic conflagration. Everyone else simply keeps a bucket of sand and a look of quiet resignation. Explosions, thankfully, aren't an everyday occurrence, but they're always a possibility. Impurities in the kerosene, air bubbles in the reservoir, or a hidden crack in the glass can turn an ordinary evening into a scene worthy of a penny dreadful serial. The family legend about Uncle Percy's eyebrows wasn't an exaggeration, just another lesson in the risks of modern living. And of course, there's the aftermath. Soot on the ceiling, a persistent oily odor, and the lingering suspicion that your curtains are now 2 inches closer to a fiery end. Cleaning the lamp is another ordeal, involving careful disassembly, caustic chemicals, and a prayer that you don't drop anything. If the lamp survives a month without incident, you feel a genuine sense of triumph, closely followed by a desire to go to bed early and finish the evening by candlelight. So tonight, as you reach over to tap your electric lamp, bask in the calm confidence that it won't explode. In the Victorian age, every night was a high-wire act, every lamp a ticking time bomb, and every family gathering lit by equal parts kerosene and raw optimism. The only thing more unpredictable than Victorian lighting was the courage it took to use it. Home is where the germs are. With no vaccines for smallpox, measles, or diphtheria, a single sneeze at Sunday lunch can wipe out half the guest list before dessert. Step into the cozy, bustling heart of a Victorian household and marvel at the miracle of family life, one that comes bundled, no extra charge, with a robust selection of infectious diseases. The parlour is filled with chatter and the clink of teacups, but lurking among the crumpets and good manners are unseen guests with names like scarlet fever, typhoid, and mumps. Victorian families didn't just pass around the breadbasket, they shared whatever bacteria or virus happened to be making the rounds that week. The first thing you notice about home life in this era is the constant, low-grade chorus of coughs, sneezes, and snuffles. Children are eternally running noses and flushed cheeks, sharing not only toys but the latest microbial trends from the schoolyard. The phrase catching cold is less a possibility and more an inevitability. The homesick day isn't a gentle afternoon on the sofa with cartoons. It's a week-long family event featuring hot water bottles, laudanum, and a lot of hoping for the best. Every home, regardless of size or class, functions as a sort of live-in petri dish. The daily rituals, sharing bowls at breakfast, kissing goodnight, squeezing onto crowded settees, are perfect opportunities for bugs to leap from person to person. Bedrooms are shared, and air is recycled through the miracle of bad ventilation. Windows are kept closed to keep out the cold, which means germs have nowhere to go but around in circles, making sure everyone gets a fair shot at the latest outbreak. The nursery is often ground zero. One child returns home with a suspicious rash or a mild cough, and within days, the siblings have joined in, followed closely by the parents, the housemaid, and, on one memorable occasion, the dog. If you're really lucky, the illness is something mundane, just a bit of the sniffles, maybe a stomach bug. If not, it's time for the family to pull out the black crepe, because you're about to become intimately acquainted with the inside of the family crypt. Medical intervention is more art than science. The family doctor arrives, all sideburns and solemnity, and prescribes whatever cure happens to be trending, bloodletting, leeches, or a soothing cup of arsenic-laced tonic. No one knows what causes disease, exactly, but everyone has theories. Bad airs, swampy neighborhoods, cold drafts, or the phases of the moon. Hygiene is a work in progress. Hand washing is optional, and baths are reserved for special occasions or major life events. Even simple childhood illnesses can be dangerous. Measles, mumps, whooping cough, and scarlet fever are frequent visitors. Vaccines, where they exist, are unreliable or reserved for the lucky few. Smallpox is a looming spectre, its scars a grim badge of survival. Diphtheria can silence a household in days. And if the sickness doesn't get you, the cure just might. Victorian medicine has a nasty habit of making things worse before they get better. School is a breeding ground for every new virus, and the church pew is another. If someone sneezes at Sunday service, you can expect a visitation by Wednesday. Dinner parties are a game of epidemiological roulette, with every shared spoonful a potential act of viral generosity. Getting out more is good for the soul and bad for the immune system. So tonight, as you reach for your hand sanitizer and marvel at your up-to-date vaccination record, spare a shiver of gratitude for modern medicine. The Victorians were brave, but mostly because they had no choice. Every meal, every visit, every family photograph was one missed sneeze away from a new addition to the album of infectious memories. In the end, it wasn't just love that bound families together, it was a robust and constantly refreshed colony of germs. As you admire your mechanical bread slicer and clockwork mousetrap, remember, in the Victorian home, every new invention is an experiment with mortality. The only guarantee is excitement and possibly tetanus. Welcome to the final frontier of Victorian domestic life, where the spirit of invention knows no bounds and every improvement comes with a few extra screws, several exposed gears, and an implied waiver of liability. This is the golden age of innovation, the time when any self-respecting household is filled to the brim with clever gadgets, labor-saving devices, and mechanical wonders just waiting to see if you'll survive the week. Let's start with the mechanical bread slicer. Why use a knife, with its simple, predictable dangers, when you could instead operate a contraption involving a lever, a spinning blade, and the vague hope that your morning toast won't cost you a fingertip? Designed for efficiency, the Victorian bread slicer can process a loaf into perfect slices, assuming you're dexterous enough to avoid the teeth of progress. A moment's distraction and breakfast quickly becomes a lesson in first aid. The same could be said for the automatic potato peeler, which has two settings: underwhelming and aggressive exfoliation. And then there's the clockwork mousetrap, a testament to the Victorian desire to outsmart nature. Wound up and set with bait, it promises a humane, scientific solution to household pests. The reality is more of a live-action Rube Goldberg machine, full of whirring cogs, springs under tension, and the sudden, unmistakable snap of doom. It's just as likely to catch your own hand, a curious pet, or the edge of your dressing gown as it is to snare a rodent. The mouse population, meanwhile, learns to tiptoe, and you, newly cautious, learn to approach all household inventions with a respectful wariness. The sewing machine is another marvel, powered by foot treadle, blessed with sharp needles, and possessed of a will of its own. Anyone who's tangled with a Victorian sewing machine knows it's part productivity tool, part fitness regimen, and part minor laceration generator. Need to mend a shirt? Why not risk a pinched finger, a runaway bobbin, and the chance that your stitches will end up as abstract art? Not to be outdone, the Victorian kitchen gleams with gadgets. Mincers, whisks, egg beaters, all made of wrought iron and ambition. Each promises to save time but doubles as an opportunity for hand-to-metal combat. The mechanical apple peeler works until it doesn't, often launching fruit across the room or leaving you with a spiral of apple skin, so impressive it should come with a medal. The laundry mangle is the household equivalent of an arm wrestling match with a steamroller. Get your sleeve caught, and you'll know the true meaning of rolling up your cuffs. The parlor, too, is a showcase for innovation with a hint of menace. Musical automata play tunes at the touch of a button, unless they jam, at which point you have to extract a stuck music box spring, risking mild electrocution or an impromptu thumb piercing. Mechanical fans circulate air, powered by a system of pulleys and the boundless optimism of their inventor. One loose screw, and you've got a bladed frisbee whizzing past the family portrait. The Victorians loved a gadget, and if it threatened life and limb, all the better. Instructions were an afterthought, safety features non-existent, and the patent office was less a filter than a cheerleader for every mad inventor with a sketchbook and access to scrap metal. Tetanus shots, unheard of. If you were lucky, you learned quickly. If not, you became a cautionary tale, or, at the very least, a memorable anecdote for your next dinner party. So tonight, as you glance around your home filled with gentle, reliable, and thoroughly regulated technology, spare a wry smile for the inventors of yesteryear. For Victorians, innovation meant embracing the thrill of the unknown and the occasional trip to the apothecary. The ultimate household innovation wasn't just comfort, but the daily gamble of survival, proof that progress, above all, keeps you on your toes. Victorian beauty routines aren't just about vanity, they're an Olympic sport in personal risk. Take the new electric hair curler. Plug it in, wait for it to glow suspiciously red, and try not to set your bangs alight. The only thing curlier than your hair is the wiring, and the only thing crispier is your self-esteem after a minor scalp fire. Let's set the scene. It's an evening of anticipation, perhaps just before a grand dinner or the weekly visit from the most judgmental aunt in the family tree. You, ever the ambitious trendsetter, are determined to impress with a head of perfectly styled, gravity-defying curls, an achievement worth its weight in social capital. Enter the latest must-have invention, the electric hair curler, a miracle of modern engineering and a fire marshal's recurring nightmare. The ritual begins in the dressing room, where you stare at your reflection, curler in one hand and a trembling sense of optimism in the other. The device itself is a marvel of copper coils and exposed wires, a strange hybrid of laboratory equipment and torture device. You consult the instructions, which are mostly illustrations of well-coiffed women looking serenely confident, not one of them sporting singed eyebrows or the haunted gaze of someone who's smelled burning hair before breakfast. The process is simple, on paper. Plug in the curler, wait for it to heat, then wrap a section of hair and count to 10. In practice, the curler heats unevenly. One side remains stubbornly lukewarm, while the other glows with the fiery intensity of a miniature furnace. You tentatively bring it to your hair, hoping for bounce and body, but fully prepared for the sizzle that signals you've wandered into dangerously close to flambe territory. The first curl emerges. It's a little crispy, a lot dramatic, and accompanied by the unmistakable whiff of roasted ambition. The risks aren't limited to fried ends. These early electrical appliances are notorious for their quirks. The wiring, lovingly assembled by someone who probably moonlights as a lightning rod, is more tangled than your actual hair. It hums and sputters with a life of its own, occasionally delivering a jolt of excitement straight to your hand. Sparks are not uncommon, and it's best to keep a bowl of water nearby, ostensibly to dampen your locks, but mostly to douse small fires or soak your scorched pride. Should you attempt to style the back of your head, prepare for a comedy of errors. The curler slips, the cord wraps around your elbow, and you find yourself locked in a battle of wills with both the appliance and the laws of physics. The faint aroma of burning hair drifts down the hallway, attracting concerned relatives, the family cat, and, If things go especially wrong, the local fire brigade. Friends and family are no help. Some cheer you on with dubious advice. It's supposed to smoke, dear. It means it's working. Others recoil in horror, clutching their own curlers like talismans against disaster. And if you do manage a perfect ringlet, there's always the risk it will unfurl into a frizzy halo the moment you step outside. Or worse, break off entirely with a gentle tug. Beauty is pain. But in the Victorian era, it's also a mild electrical hazard. Of course, you could always use traditional curling irons heated in the fireplace or on the stove, but those come with their own risks: soot, ash, and the ever-present threat of dropping a red-hot rod onto your lap. Progress, in the form of electricity, merely exchanges one danger for another, plus a dash of self-inflicted humiliation for good measure. So tonight, as you reach for your safe, modern curling wand and marvel at its automatic shut-off feature, spare a kind thought for your Victorian counterpart. She risked life, limb, and reputation for a fleeting moment of fabulousness. The curls might not last, but the stories do, and if you ever catch a whiff of burnt toast when nobody's cooking, remember, it could just be history's way of warning you to unplug your beauty routine before things get too electrifying. Every fashionable family needs a parlour piano. Never mind that the tuning pins shoot out like medieval crossbow bolts and the ivory keys are suspiciously sharp. Whether you're serenading guests or fending off an airborne G above middle C, remember. In the Victorian home, music appreciation comes with a side of tetanus. Let's slip into your elegant Victorian drawing room, a cosy little arena for after-dinner entertainment and impromptu talent shows. No self-respecting household would be caught without a gleaming upright or baby grand pushed up against arsenic green wallpaper and flanked by slightly wilted parlour palms. The piano isn't just for music. It's a badge of culture, refinement, and, as it turns out, latent risk. The parlour piano of the 19th century is a marvel of craftsmanship, weighing somewhere between hefty sideboard and small horse. The wood is polished to a blinding sheen. The keys a radiant parade of ivory and ebony, and the metal frame is under more tension than the average Victorian dinner party. When it comes to tuning, you'll need nerves of steel and a strong sense of self-preservation. Each pin is wound tight, holding back a set of strings that, if mishandled, can snap with a twang and send shrapnel whizzing through the room at speeds that make you rethink the phrase musical attack. Tuning day is a household event, often accompanied by collective dread. The local piano tuner, part craftsman, part daredevil, arrives with a battered toolkit, a haunted expression, and a tendency to stand slightly to one side while tightening the pins. The family gathers, hoping for harmonious results and secretly anticipating the possibility of a dramatic mishap. Every adjustment is punctuated by a series of ominous clicks, creaks, and the silent prayer that the next note won't be your last. The keys themselves are another hazard. Carved from genuine ivory, and occasionally bone, if the budget is tight, they're sharp at the edges, cold to the touch, and surprisingly effective at delivering paper-cut-style injuries. Youngsters learning chopsticks come away with fingers wrapped in handkerchiefs and a newfound respect for the musical arts. For the over-enthusiastic player, a glissando can become an act of self-flagellation, the sharp edges of the keys leaving behind both melody and minor lacerations. The inner workings of the piano are no safer. Peer inside, and you'll find a dense thicket of wires, hammers, and felt, each waiting for an unwary hand to wander in. The action can seize up, keys can stick, and occasionally, if you're very unlucky, a long-forgotten mouse nest may be discovered during a particularly spirited rendition of Fur Elise. Dust clouds billow out from between the strings, leaving the entire room, and most of the guests, sneezing in time with the music. Then there's the matter of moving the piano. This is a neighbourhood event requiring every able-bodied person within shouting distance. The instrument is large, unwieldy, and liable to roll over toes, collapse stairs, or pin an unlucky cousin against the wall. There are stories, always whispered, of pianos that have crashed through parlors, down stairwells, or into the garden below. If you survive the annual spring rearrangement, you've earned your stripes in the unofficial Victorian parlor infantry. And yet, for all its risks, the parlor piano remains the soul of the household. It's where families gather for rousing sing-alongs, where suitors prove their worth with a halting waltz, and where every minor injury becomes a badge of honor to be recounted over tea for years to come. So tonight, as you listen to your perfectly tuned digital playlist, spare a whimsical thought for the Victorians who risked splinters, airborne shrapnel, and glissando-induced bloodshed, all in the name of music. In the 19th century parlor, the piano was more than an instrument. It was a test of courage, dexterity, and the very limits of musical endurance. Refrigeration is still a young, poorly supervised intern. Your new icebox promises fresh food, but really offers a scenic vacation for mold, maggots, and disease. Enjoy your dairy before it escapes under its own power, and whatever you do, don't trust the leftover fish from last Thursday. Let's open the creaky wooden door of your Victorian kitchen and step up to the pride of modern convenience, the household icebox. Not quite a fridge, not quite a tomb. The icebox sits in the corner, humming with the faint optimism of progress and the louder realities of entropy. It's a sturdy cabinet, lined with tin or zinc, and chilled by a block of ice harvested from a distant frozen lake, and delivered by a man who's as strong as he is unconcerned with hygiene. The idea is simple: put perishables inside, keep them cool, and avoid the familiar aroma of eau de spoilage. The execution, however, is anything but foolproof. The temperature inside is about as stable as a Victorian's mood during allergy season, and the ice block, meant to last a week, melts in half the time if you so much as glance at the door. Meltwater trickles into a pan underneath, where it sits, stagnates, and serves as a cheerful breeding ground for all sorts of microscopic guests. If you forget to empty the pan, the floor becomes a slip and slide of historical regret. What about the food? Well, the milk sours before you've had time to brew a proper cup of tea, the cheese develops a personality of its own, and the butter takes on that subtle tang of something isn't right. Eggs? They're a gamble. Crack one open and you might get breakfast, or you might unleash a gaseous ghost that sends the family running for the window. Leftovers become science experiments, complete with colourful spots and the thrilling possibility that the roast beef could try to leave under its own steam. Then there's the fish. In the Victorian kitchen, seafood is a status symbol, provided you serve it before it develops sentience. Fish goes from fresh to fatal with alarming speed, especially during the summer. You place it carefully in the icebox, only to discover, days later, that the smell has not only escaped the confines of the kitchen but has taken up residence in the entire house. A particularly bold cod might even outlast the block of ice, by which point even the dog refuses to go near it. Of course, the icebox is not without hazards of its own. The heavy door is a menace, perfectly weighted to slam shut on unsuspecting fingers or, in a fit of kitchen chaos, to trap a sleeve or apron. And let's not forget the daily visit from the iceman, who clomps through the hallway, trailing half a garden's worth of mud and slush, swapping out the melting block for a fresh one. Timing is everything. Miss the iceman's round, and you're left with a glorified cupboard and a handful of melting hopes. The real danger, however, is invisible. With no concept of bacteria, germs, or salmonella, the Victorians chalk up every upset stomach to bad air, nerves, or an unfortunate coincidence. Foodborne illnesses sweep through the household in regular waves, and a week-old cream cake becomes a test of both bravery and intestinal fortitude. Children are told to eat up, waste not, want not, while quietly the cat circles the icebox, ever on the lookout for the next edible casualty. And yet, the icebox is a point of pride. Guests are invited to marvel at its shiny fittings, and the family brags about having the very latest thing. Never mind that it's a marvel primarily in the sense that anything stored within is still edible after Tuesday. So tonight, As you close the door on your humming, frost-free refrigerator, pause for a moment of gratitude. The Victorians faced every meal as a culinary adventure, complete with surprise flavors, questionable textures, and the ever-present risk of biological warfare. In the age of the icebox, survival really was the best seasoning. So, as we leave behind the velvet-draped chaos of the Victorian home, take a deep, relieved breath, preferably somewhere with a little less arsenic in the air. Tonight, you've braved gas leaks, exploding carpets, rogue kettles, and cheese graters with the bloodlust of a Dickensian villain. You've survived staircases designed by someone with a personal grudge against ankles, admired wallpaper that could double as a murder weapon, and considered just how many inventions Victorians came up with before they invented basic safety standards. If nothing else, maybe you feel a little more grateful for your 21st century amenities. You can shower without the threat of spontaneous combustion. Your bread probably doesn't include sawdust. And unless your cat is particularly vindictive, your electric doorbell won't send you to the great beyond. But let's not forget the Victorians themselves. For all their questionable choices, these people were the pioneers of progress, sometimes at their own peril. They built, they tinkered, they wallpapered with lethal confidence, all in the name of comfort, status, and, occasionally, just because they could. It's easy to laugh, but their stubbornness, inventiveness, and sheer willingness to risk it all for a slightly warmer bath or a slightly brighter parlour are, in their own weird way, a testament to human resilience. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into a bed that doesn't double as a biohazard, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to your ancestors, who survived lead pipes, exploding teapots, and the world's most dangerous cheese grater. History is often absurd, occasionally terrifying, but always proof that people, no matter how misguided, were endlessly hopeful and delightfully ridiculous. Now close your eyes, let yourself drift, and rest easy. The only thing trying to kill you tonight is your own sense of procrastination. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next slightly safer chapter of history.